Do you feel like you're dragging them along in the relationship? Are you feeling super stressed about someone you're newly dating? Keep listening because these could be 2 of 10 signs it will probably not work out with someone you're in the early stages of dating with. Today, we're getting deep into these signs and what to do if they show up. Welcome back to Dating Intentionally. I'm Talia, I'm a dating coach, and I'm sharing no-nonsense advice for navigating modern dating with confidence and ease, whether you've been on dozens of dates or you're just getting started. I believe dating can be fun, especially when we can see something for what it is and leave before it gets worse. I've said this, other dating experts have said this, but we want to get to the no faster and not hang on to things that just won't work. Before we dive in, I just want to say it means a lot to me when you follow, rate, and review this podcast. If you've already rated the show, thank you so much. And if you haven't done that yet, and this show has helped you in your dating journey, I'd really appreciate it if you did. Your ratings help other intentional daters find this podcast, which helps them find love. You can rate this podcast on Spotify by tapping the 3 dots under the cover art. And if you're an Apple Podcast person, you can do this by scrolling down to the bottom of the podcast page on the app and leaving a 5-star rating and a review down there. Thank you so much for all of your support. I really mean it. Okay, let's get right into it. Here are 10 signs it's not going to work out with someone you're dating. These signs apply to early dating, and this is for people who you're just getting to know, or maybe you're in the first few months of dating officially. I also want to say that if 1 or 2 of these signs is present, it's not the end of the world. And I think with solid communication and an open mind, some things can be worked on. But it really depends on how willing you are and how willing they are to put the effort in. Sometimes it is just better to find someone else who is a better match. And at the end of this episode, I'm going to tell you what to do if these signs are present with someone you're dating. All right, number 1, it's hard to make plans with them. They're too busy, right? This happens quite often in dating, I feel like, especially in the first few dates. This is going to be when someone does not have room for you in their schedule. You're going to know this is happening when you keep trying to make plans and they never pan out. Maybe they cancel or they reschedule. Maybe they'll cancel on you last minute. Maybe they're just like kind of never really telling you when they're available. The thing is, you can't date someone who doesn't have time to see you. And this is the same for long distance dating too, right? When I say see you, I mean spend time with you one-on-one live, whether that's in the flesh or on a video call. They're making time to be present with you. Another version of this is that they never plan anything or follow through. So this is the pen pal scenario. You might try to drop hints or mention that you want to meet. Maybe they say they want to, but they never tell you when they're available or make a plan. Or they make plans and cancel, right? The person who constantly cancels or reschedules on you is not trying to be in a relationship with you, unfortunately. If it happens once or twice and you've also seen them, like you've been on a few dates and then maybe once or twice they cancel and it's kind of like sporadic, that's fine. Life happens. But a general rule of thumb is that if someone cancels on you or needs to reschedule, it's on them to pick up the planning and find a time with you. And when I say it's hard to make plans with them, I mean on a date, right? This is another version of this is if they only see you if you go to their house. Do not settle for this low effort BS. If they never meet you for a real date, outside, both of you outside the home, like at a restaurant, at a bar, at a bowling alley, I don't care, then that person is not going to be in a relationship with you. You deserve to be in a relationship with someone who makes time to see you and isn't just relying on the convenience of you going to their place and they never have to like leave the house or anything. No, thank you. Number 2, they tell you they're going through something. Of course, this isn't always the case. Like, yes, life happens, like I just said. But if someone hits you with a, I'm just figuring things out right now, it's probably best to leave them be, especially in early dating, like the first 3 to 5 dates. Basically early dating before you have a foundation of a relationship. An example of this is when they talk about how they are having a lot of work stress or maybe a family thing they have to deal with, which again is valid, like that is very real. But they're basically making an excuse to get you to break up with them or get you to stop seeing them rather than telling you straight up, I'm too busy for this right now. This is not a priority right now. It's hard to say that to someone. And so I get why people basically give you the runaround by saying like, oh, my family, oh, my work. While those are real, it's just, if you don't have time or can't make time for someone, then you probably shouldn't be dating. And yeah, this is not an invitation for you to wait for them and to figure it out and let their busy season pass. Look, life is always crazy. There's always something. When someone really wants to get to know you, they're not going to let work stress get in the way of that. You want someone who can make you feel prioritized when there is work stress. And I know this is not an example from an early relationship, but my fiance managed to propose to me and take care of me when I was recovering from my surgery during the busiest month of the year from at work. This is a guy who was working past midnight some nights and working on weekends, and he still made me feel like a top priority. And I've done the same for him during my busy season. So they just obviously when you're in an early dating situation, you're not important enough in each other's lives to do that yet, and that's fine. But you really do want to look for someone who can either carve out the time when they're really busy or just be honest with you and themselves that they're too busy to date. If they don't make an effort at all, then it's just not going to work out because back to the first point, you need to see each other and spend time being present with each other, whether that's on a date or on a, FaceTime if you're long distance, to build a relationship. All right, number 3, if their communication is inconsistent. So in early dating, if someone's communication is inconsistent, like they're texting you nonstop for a week and then their text slows down significantly, or maybe they have one word answers or don't carry conversation, that is a clear sign they're not interested or not available for a relationship. You deserve someone who's consistent, right? If at first it's like, oh my God, just the texting, it's like on point, you can predict it, and then all of a sudden there's a change, something's up. Something's off. You have to trust that gut feeling you have. And yes, like I said, life gets crazy, life happens. And if that's happening, like we can have the standard that people will let us know when things are crazy and that they're going to be slower on text. Like, hey, I'm at a conference this week. I'm going to be not on my phone very much, but maybe I'll be able to check in at night. Don't expect to hear from me often. Like that's a great communication, even though that's annoying when you're first getting to know someone because you want them to be available to chat. At least they're giving you a heads up and you know what to expect. But if people just fall off or slow down with no warning and no reason, then it's a huge red flag, if not a deal breaker, because especially in the beginning, we want to look for that consistency. You deserve someone who's consistent, who you can rely on, and who's predictable. Even though no one's 100% predictable, you don't want to be with a person who just falls off with no warning. People's behavior doesn't necessarily get better when you're in a relationship with them. Generally, people are on their best behavior when you're starting to get to know them and you're in your early dating phase. So just keep that in mind. And the reason why this probably won't work out if their communication is inconsistent is that it's really hard to build trust and build a relationship with inconsistent communication, especially if it triggers your stress and anxiety. It's just not an ingredient to a stable, healthy, secure relationship. All right, number 4, if they say they don't want a relationship, clear sign it's not going to work out. This hardly needs an explanation, but if they say they're not ready or they don't want a relationship or they're not over their ex or they're figuring out their dating goals, believe them. This is not an invitation to convince this person. This is not a challenge for you to be like, I bet I can change their mind. This is a gigantic sign in your face to walk away and find someone who is ready and open to building a connection that leads to the kind of relationship you're after, which you deserve. Here's the issue about pursuing a person who doesn't want a relationship. They will take advantage of you, basically, even if they don't mean to, because you're showing up in partner mode, hoping that they will change their mind, and they get to give you the bare minimum, and you just kind of go along with it. Hell no, we are not doing that. You deserve so much more, so please stop waiting for them to have a change of heart. Number 5, if you feel more stressed in the relationship than anything else. If your relationship is causing you anxiety or stress, or you're losing sleep over it, it's probably not going to work out in the long run. Think about what it's doing to your body. Stress is not great for us physically, and it's definitely not great for us mentally. Ideally, in your relationship, you feel at peace and relaxed at least 70% of the time, with conflict showing up maybe around 30% of the time. And I am making up these numbers. I'm just saying most of the time, ideally, you want to be content, peaceful, not feeling stressed out. You want a partner who helps regulate your nervous system, not, makes it act up, right? So if you feel like you are fighting more than you're being playful and having fun and early on together, your relationship will probably crash and burn. Yes, you can fix some of these issues. especially if there's something you can talk through, but who knows if you will really be able to. I know it sounds pessimistic, but I prefer the approach of finding a partner who you get along with up front so that when you do eventually face conflicts, it's so much easier to get through them because you have a stronger foundation. Generally, if you don't have fun together, that's not necessarily a relationship worth keeping. I know not everyone values fun, or maybe you have different definitions of fun, but the best relationship for you is going to feel easy to be in, however you want to define that. No, you're not going to have fun and feel amazing 100% of the time of your relationship, but we are aiming for that 70%. So if you're with someone who is stressing you out more than they're contributing to you feeling at peace, that's a sign it's probably not the best for you. Okay, so we've gone over the first 5. Those were it's hard to make plans with them. They're going through something that causes them to not have time or energy to date. Their communication is inconsistent. They say they don't want a relationship, and you feel more stressed out than anything else. I have 5 more. Let's keep going. Also, a reminder that if you are enjoying this podcast too, please rate, follow, and review. Okay, let's keep going. Number 6, if your sexual preferences have absolutely no overlap. So when it comes to sex, ideally you have some overlapping preferences in how you want to be intimate together and what you enjoy and what you consent to. I think it'd be really hard to maintain a long-term romantic relationship when your sex preferences are in completely different universes. This does not have anything to do with mismatched libidos. That is actually a very solvable problem as long as both partners are willing to come together and work on it. This is more about what your idea of a good time in the bedroom is and what their idea of a good time in the bedroom is. And if they don't align and neither partner is willing to meet halfway, then your relationship probably won't work out. Of course, there is always the option of exploring ethical non monogamy to get your sexual needs met outside of your primary relationship. And I am fully supportive of that if that's the best option for you. But if you're looking for a monogamous relationship, it's going to be really hard to be with them if you can't have a sex life that you're both on board with and enjoy most of the time. So keep that in mind. Number 7, if you disagree on major things in life, this is things like kids, right? It's not going to work out long term if you want kids and they don't, or if they want kids and you don't, stuff like that. That is something you absolutely just can't compromise on. So if you find out in early dating that the person you're talking to doesn't align with you on family and children, all that stuff, it's a good idea to stop seeing them, especially if it's really important to you, and especially if you are a woman and you're, in your childbearing years, if you're in your 30s and you feel the clock ticking, that's just a clear sign to walk away, and you're better off finding someone who wants kids if you want kids. Of course, it's always that question, well, what if they don't know or you don't know, they're on the fence, you're on the fence? Then at that point, just more discussions need to be had. And I think it's okay to be on the fence. It's okay to date if you're on the fence. You just need to be upfront and you need to be open and willing to have these conversations without too much pressure. Because you can talk about the concept of having kids with someone without implying that you want to have kids with them, right? Like for me, I'm leaning more yes, but I'm also kind of on the fence. And for me, it's like a financial decision. It's like, will I have enough money to support a child in the way that I want to? And that's kind of my test for if I want to have them or not. So it's worth exploring and discussing if you find someone who's on the fence or you're on the fence, that kind of thing. But if it's like a hard yes and a hard no and it doesn't align with you, that is a sign that it's not going to work out. Same goes for strong opinions and positions on religious values and political values. These are things that basically anything that's really, really, really important to you, like a non-negotiable. If you're dating someone who is the opposite or doesn't align with that, then you might be better off finding someone who does align with you. Sometimes these values, like if you disagree on certain things within religion, politics, and other topics, they bleed out into larger family dynamics. For example, this is not my situation, but I'm Jewish, and if my parents really cared about me finding and marrying someone who's Jewish, they would have a huge problem with my fiance who is not. Luckily, that's not my situation, but that's an example of how that could create tension within my whole family, not just within the relationship. So you want to think about, again, what kind of stress are you going to choose for your life? What kind of stress are you willing to deal with for the rest of your life? disagreeing on these big things can be so tough to deal with. It's a lot of strain on a relationship. And this is what I mean when I say that love isn't enough. Chemistry isn't enough. You need compatibility to have a solid relationship that doesn't cause you a lot of stress. Would you rather be in a relationship where you constantly feel like you're fighting to convince each other to change each other's minds? Or would you rather just meet someone who's aligned? You don't need to have all the stress and drama in a relationship. You can find a partner who has similar life goals and values. Number 8, if you don't have respect for them or if they don't have respect for you, this is the baseline. Lack of respect for each other will absolutely ruin a relationship. Contempt is actually one of the 4 horsemen of divorce, and I can link more info on that in the show notes. But contempt is like when a feeling that of scorn for someone, like that person or what they're doing is worthless. And this is very similar to me to a lack of respect. It's like you just don't respect someone. And why would we ever date or be friends with people who we don't respect? It makes no sense. This is one of the core things you need in a relationship to make it work. I remember I had this sense of disrespect, with a guy I dated when I was 22. He was a really nice guy, but as I got to know him, I respected him less. There was really nothing wrong with him. Just for some reason, I just didn't feel like I respected him, and I couldn't stay with someone I didn't respect. And that relationship only lasted 8 months. So if you feel like they're disrespecting you, like they're judging your choices and they're putting you down, or maybe in your mind you're putting them down and judging their choices, probably not going to work out. That doesn't sound like a happy relationship to me. Number 9, there's absolutely no intimacy. So intimacy comes in many forms, right? We're looking at no emotional intimacy, no sexual intimacy. You need a closeness in a relationship to work long term. You're not roommates. You're not just two people coexisting and like moving side by side through life without interacting with each other. If there's no vulnerability, openness, intimacy, or deeper connection, it's likely that relationship isn't going anywhere. There's nothing really to sustain it. Sometimes there is an emotional block that you can remove, but sometimes there's not. And sometimes just maybe bad timing in terms of people's healing process. But again, we don't want to wait for them to heal. So is it worth trying to move past? Honestly, if you ask me, not especially in early dating. If you find that you are struggling to create any kind of deeper connection and intimacy with someone you've been dating for more than a month, then I think it's time to let that one go. It's not going to be immediate, right? Deeper connections take time. So this one does not apply to the first few dates. Like if you don't feel intimacy and deeper connection within the first 3 dates, that's not a red flag necessarily. But if you've been hanging out with someone consistently for at least a month, in person, and you just don't feel any kind of deeper connection, they're probably not it. All right, the last one, number 10. When they have a quality or trait that you think will change or that you hope will change. This is a big one. If you're dating someone and you wish something about them would change, I invite you to stop dating them or accept it, right? We need to date people as if they will never change. And yes, of course, people will evolve and change. There's no guarantee around how or in what direction, right? We're all growing, we're all evolving, but I can't control how someone else is going, like what direction they're going to grow in, or if they're going to grow into the kind of person that I want them to be. So don't date for potential, accept people as they are. We let them show us who they are. And if you're sitting there being like, oh, I just wish they would do more this or more that, like, yes, in some cases you can communicate that. But if there's something fundamental about who they are, like, one of their core values or their beliefs on something that doesn't align with yours, that's probably not the best person to continue dating. Because if you wait around for things to change, it's likely you'll be waiting forever and be extremely disappointed. So the options are leaving or accepting, right? Like fully just letting go and accepting who they are. And if you can't, then for sure that is not the person that you should be with. Just to recap, those last 5 signs were if your sexual preferences have no overlap, if you disagree on major things that are important to you, if there's a lack of respect, if there's no intimacy of any kind, and if you are constantly wishing they would change in some way. Again, I want to remind you that if one or two of these signs are present, your relationship isn't necessarily doomed. And some of these can be worked on if both of you have an open mind and desire to improve your relationship or meet halfway. Some of them, not all. So, what do we do if we run into any of these signs early on? If you catch one of these signs within the first few dates, it's okay to shoot them an anti-ghost text and move on. If you catch one of these later on, like after a month of exclusively seeing each other and there's a desire on both ends to keep the relationship going, then you want to bring it up for sure. Same goes for more established relationships. Having a conversation at the very least opens up the door to making changes and adjustments if possible. So, for more established relationships, it could be worth giving your partner and yourself an opportunity to work on things by bringing it up. So, my favorite way to bring something up is just like when you're both calm and in a neutral space, you say, "Hey, can I share something that's been on my mind?" Or like, "Hey, something has been on my mind I want to share with you." I find that's a really soft startup, right, to a conversation. Also, like, "Hey, I want to talk about something with you. Do you have a minute?" Right? Being like, "Do you have time right now?" Don't bring this up when they're in the middle of working or like in the middle of doing something. It should be when you are both together, being present with each other, and the mood is calm. And I get it. It's scary to bring things up with people. It is very scary, but it's something that you can do. You are capable of doing it. You have to do it to be able to be in a long-term relationship. You have to get comfortable bringing things up, even though you risk losing them. And that is what being in a healthy relationship is, because when you're in a long-term stable relationship, the trust is so strong that you can bring up these important things without this overwhelming fear that it'll all fall apart the second you poke at it. So have that trust. Have the trust that when you bring up something to someone in a way that's like, "Hey, I want to work on this with you," or "This is important to me and I want to figure it out as a team," trust that they'll get on board with you. And if they don't, well, you need to. It takes two. If they don't get on board and they're not into solving it and they're not into figuring out a solution, then that's your sign that you either have to accept it or walk away. Those are your two options, or try again, but it's tough. Not all relationship issues are solvable. I don't know if you've heard this, but I've heard this from reading a lot of books and listening to a lot of experts, that there are perpetual problems in a relationship that you just kind of have to learn how to navigate together, knowing that it'll never be 100% solved. It's just never going to be like put to bed. So some of these things in this podcast that I listed could be perpetual issues, like core values you don't align on, figuring out intimacy issues, and stuff like that. But it starts with the conversation. So if you don't start the conversation, there is no opportunity to work through things as a team with your person. And who knows, maybe if you bring something up, you'll discover that they're an incredible communicator and you're a great team. By withholding and not sharing and not bringing things up, you're missing out on an opportunity to connect and be closer and see how you work as a team. Regardless of what you choose to do, if you see any of these signs present, I want you to trust your gut. You're doing great. All right, thanks for listening. I'd love it if you share this episode with someone who's navigating dating and might need a little confidence boost or some tough love. If any of these episodes have helped you in your journey, you can help me by leaving a stunning review on Apple or giving Dating Intentionally 5 stars on Spotify. I'd really appreciate it. Once again, I'm Talia. This has been Dating Intentionally, and I'll catch you next time.